All right, philosophers, we're going to look at some reductive theories of mind. We're also going to look at thought experiments as a premise to you guys doing that on your own. So a couple terms I want to introduce to you. One of those is positivism. Positivism is the idea that only those objects or forces that can be verified with the scientific method actually exist. So positivism is not a scientific position, it's a philosophical position. So obviously it comes out of science. It arises in the 19th century after the seeming success of the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and a whole range of different technological developments, which give a lot of authority to science. So positivism, this notion that only those things that can be verified with your senses exist, is actually, if you think about that statement itself, it can't be verified using the method that's specified in the statement. So it is a claim about truth, but the claim about truth related to science being the only way to know is not something that you can use science to verify. So it is a problematic statement, but it has certainly been very influential in helping us understand how this approach has led to a reductive idea with the mind-body problem. So philosophers and scientists have tried to use this principle to eliminate talk of supernatural entities or immaterial entities to influence our take on Cartesian dualism. So one of those positions is called Epiphenomenalism. If I can spell it. Phenomenalism. There we go. All right. So epiphenomenalism is the argument that driving from evolutionary biology, that physical processes are the ones that essentially are the determinant of human behavior, and that the mental events that we tend to focus our attention on, so you can think of any mental event that you might have during the day. It could be anger, fear, love, joy, accessing the memories and not just using those memories as a tool to drive you forward, but to, think about how they provide meaning to your life. All of that mental life is an unnecessary side effect of physical processes. In other words, it's fairly irrelevant. So if you think about your brain, okay. Bad drawing. So there's the physical processes, and within your brain you have neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, and they're all doing their work based on evolutionary biology, navigating your environment, providing you with fitness to survive in a particular local situation. And so then we have this mental life, which basically arises off of these physical processes. So epiphenomenalism is the argument that these mental events are physically, causally ineffective. They don't really do anything. There's a little bit like water vapor coming off of a boiling pot. Don't really have any impact, particularly in changing anything within the world. So this is kind of a difficult position for a lot of people to accept. I kind of think it's a bit of a non-starter when it comes to reductive theories of mind, because it basically tells you that your mental life is irrelevant. And I think most of us probably would argue that our mental life is pretty significant. So another candidate is called logical behaviorism. This comes out of the work of B.F. Skinner, great behavioral psychologist. Some of you may have studied in the early 20th century. So logical behaviorism is the notion that all mental events are basically reducible to behavioral dispositions. So in other words, to be in a mental state just means you're disposed or predisposed to behave in a certain way. So think about if you might be angry. So if you're angry, you would feel your blood pressure rise. You might physically exhibit symptoms of clenching your teeth. You may have a vein that pops out of your neck or your temple. Your face may turn red. You may speak in a deeper tone of voice. You may speak more angrily. So the idea here is that everything is reducible to the methodologies of science. So behavior is something that we can observe. We can categorize it. We can quantify it. So it's basically like taking the metaphysical notion of a mental event and reducing it down to whatever fits the methodologies or the epistemology of the sciences. Okay. Now, obviously, there's some problems with this. One of the problems is we can be in several different mental events at the same time. I could feel fearful and I could feel angry at the same time, and those behaviors don't necessarily have the exact same symptoms. So then how, if I were to be reading this, would I categorize the person's behavior according to these sort of standard categories of analysis? It's almost like you have an infinite regression of different kinds of behaviors which could all overlap with one another. Other problems are some of these thought experiments. So I'm going to explain what a thought experiment is. A thought experiment is a way to test a concept or an idea. So you're of course used to physical experiments that you would conduct in a laboratory. So a thought experiment is important because it allows us to see whether a concept is consistent or not. So thought experiments are either constructive, meaning that they're designed to support the feasibility, conceivability of a particular idea, to show that it's coherent, that it's rational, or they're destructive, and that they show that there's some internal conflict or incoherence in a particular theory. So one of the ones I want to use to test logical behaviorism is the Super Spartans thought experiment. So the thought experiment here, I'm just abbreviating TE. So if you may know anything about the ancient Spartans, they were a warlike people in ancient Greece. They had a very militaristic culture, and part of this involved training people to essentially overcome any physical weakness that they had. So you can imagine somebody who could feel tremendous pain but gives no physical symptoms of it, and nobody who observes them would be able to tell that they're in pain. So this seems to be a counterexample to logical behaviorism. So if all it means to be in a mental event is to exhibit behaviors, here we have a disconnect, because somebody is experiencing pain, which we all know is an important mental event. It's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, we want it to end, yet they're exhibiting no symptoms of it. And in the reverse, there's what's called the perfect pretender thought experiment. So this is the opposite. There are some people, and it's a strange condition, but it's actually pretty dangerous, who are incapable of feeling pain. Pain is important because as uncomfortable as it is, it gives us information about our organism, our body being harmed. So if you were to put your hand on a hot stove and you wouldn't feel any pain, then obviously you could experience like severe burns and maybe lose flesh because you weren't able to feel the pain. So let's say somebody's unable to feel pain, and this causes them to feel like a pariah, an outsider. So they've learned by observing other people to mimic the symptoms of pain. So if I were to walk in the classroom and crash my knee very hard against one of the desks and be in tremendous pain, but as a normal person, but let's say I'm the perfect pretender, I would not feel the pain, but I would recognize that people would gasp because they think I would be hurt. So I might just grimace, I might hop up and down, I might swear, and so I seem to be exhibiting the behavior of pain, but I'm not actually in the mental state of pain. So once again, we seem to have a contradiction between, in logical behaviorism, between a mental event and the supposed behaviors that are the reduction of that mental event. Another one that goes along with this is what's called Ryle's University Seeker. This one is actually a constructive thought experiment to show how dualist views of the mind are incorrect. So let's say we went to Northwestern's campus. You're interested in applying to Northwestern. I'm an alumnus, so I'm going to show you around. And you say, can you show me Northwestern University? And I say, sure. So we go over and we look at the quad. We look at the rock that students like to paint different colors. I show you the ugly library with its 3 towers and tell you the places that I used to go study. We walk over to the registrar's office. We look at the student union. We go to the Pick-Steiger Concert Hall. I show you some of the academic buildings. And when we're done, you say to me, you ask this question well, that was all very nice, all those buildings and people and places, but where's the university? And I would say that you're making what Ryle calls a category mistake, is you think that the university is something over and above all the different parts that I showed you and how they interact with one another. So Ryle's using this thought experiment to show how the idea of a mind as something that's over and above the processes of the brain, the behaviors of the brain, the neurochemicals, the neurons, is making a category mistake. It's thinking that the university is something over and above when it's actually not. So this is a thought experiment that's designed to support the notion of reductive theories of mind. So this gives you like an overview of some of the different possibilities of theories that you could draw from to engage in the project of reduction, which is important for science. But as you might be able to see here, there's also some problems and gaps with reductive theories because they overlook the qualitative dimension of experience and the importance that we place upon our mental lives. So what I'd like you to do is take some of this background and if you go to the Canvas assignment for today, you'll see that there are some thought experiments that apply to many of the different theories. One of those theories, which we haven't talked much about yet, but you're reading the Actively Learn article, is functionalism. So functionalism is basically the philosophy behind artificial intelligence. It says that it doesn't matter what you're made out of. You don't need to be made out of either an immaterial Cartesian substance or a physical brain to be intelligent. All you have to do is take inputs, data. In the case of computers, it would be digital code, process it according to an algorithm or a program, and produce the bright outputs, which would be either other data or symbols or perhaps decisions that would be useful in the particular world that we live in. So functionalism basically just argues as long as something can do those things, then it is intelligent. So the question is, using the thought experiments like the Turing test and Searle's Chinese room thought experiment, is this a coherent and consistent idea? Okay, so good luck with the thought experiments, and hopefully this gives you an idea of how complex the mind-body problem is and all the different possibilities that there are in being able to determine what's the most convincing account of what a mind is.